Hi everyone, I'm Evangeline here at eTrailer. Today we have the INNO Tire Hold HD, a heavy duty bike rack that we're going to take a look at how it fits here on our 2020 Chevrolet Traverse. Now right off the bat, if you need to carry heavy bikes on your Traverse, there's things you have to keep in mind. One is that your hitch is probably going to be really high off the ground, so you'll want something that is ramp compatible. The other thing is that your Traverse has a really large door, so not every bike rack is going to give you good clearance for getting into your cargo space. And that's going to be the first thing we'll talk about with the INNO Tire Hold. Now I love pretty much all the features of the tire hold, from the high weight capacity to how easy it is to load your bikes up. But the tilt away is probably going to be the one thing that I find lacking. When you pull this lever at the end, you can tilt your bike rack down. Now, as you can see, you don't really tilt down that far. So, if you need to get access into your cargo space, first I recommend having your pedal in a low position, just enough where your door will clear, and then coming up to the handlebars. For us, that's where we have our issues. Even if we had a road bike with shorter handlebars, we still wouldn't clear, but still, this is plenty of space to reach in there, grab helmets, waters, backpacks, those kinds of things, without having to take your bikes off. So if you did need to take your bikes off because you needed full cargo space, the good news is that process is very simple. This is what we call a dual wheel mounted rack. That is when a bike rack holds the bikes on by the front and the rear wheels, which is great if you have a different type of frame because there's zero frame contact. So if you have a step-through bike or a mountain bike, doesn't matter, it's holding on to the wheels. If you have fenders as well, depending on where the fender sits, you can just adjust the cradle up and down on the bike rack to avoid those fenders and still have a secure fit. And to release those mounts, you have these silver buttons here on your tray. So what I do is I press the buttons, 1 and 2, and actually from this point onwards, I can push out on either that wheel mount or on where that button is, and then I'm just alternating hands back and forth. I don't have to run all the way around the bike to get things disengaged. I can now just grab the bike and go. And if you want, you could also get a ramp add-on that you can use with this rack in case the height for lifting the bike just isn't as feasible for an 80-pound bike. And this is what that ramp looks like. When you remove the lever on the side of your mount, you can then lower the wheel mount all the way down to the ground. And then you can put the ramp on there. Now remember, this ramp is an add-on sold separately. Usually I don't recommend it if it's not needed, but in the case of the Traverse, you can see that even here, this is already a very steep angle. So getting your bikes up and down the rack this way will be a lot easier with a ramp. Your bike rack, when not in use, you can fold those mounts down so it all looks nice and neat. Now, let's take some measurements for how much space this will take up behind your vehicle. And if you measure from the bumper to the end of the rack, that's gonna be 34 inches. And that's something to be mindful of if you have a small garage or you need to park into a really tight spot. That's gonna be more space you have to think of behind you. The next measurement is going to be ground clearance. And for me, I measure that from the tray to the ground, where we have 27 inches. And that's how much height you're going to have to lift your heavy bikes up and onto the rack. The next measurement is going to be ground clearance of the rack to the ground, which is about 23.5. And that's how much height you're going to have to think about for steep inclines. I wouldn't worry about it. Plenty of space there. There's not much of a chance of bottoming out for your driveways or hills. You can move your rack into different positions. So remember that handle we pulled to tilt the bike rack down? Well, instead of letting it drop, we're going to instead lift up. Notice this red indicator showing that we have the handle pulled. This has 2 positions up top. One is going to be your angled position, and for some vehicles where you have like a spare tire or just a oddly shaped bumper, this is going to give you some more clearance there. Some vehicles you're able to open up the hatch. Well, that's not going to be the case for the Traverse. So we're just going to go ahead into the more compact position. And this is usually how you'll store your bike rack in your garage or in a shed. And when you're driving around town, this is how you'll have your bike rack, because not everyone sees a rack when it's down, but when it's up like this, it's gonna be more visible for the people and cars behind you. And this is what they will see. So your tail lights are going to be visible. Obviously, your rear window is going to be completely visible. Now, you do cover your license plate and your backup camera technically. So your backup camera sits right here where that handle is. So what's gonna happen is that you're gonna lose a lot of visibility through your backup camera. You may be able to see people if they are walking behind you, but I do recommend relying more on your side mirrors as well as your rear mirror for safety. This bike rack will fit into a 2-inch hitch receiver, like what we have here. You did not see a lock on that hitch bolt because the lock is actually over here in the front of the bike rack. So this is going to be a multi-purpose knob. You put the cable lock included with the rack into this knob. This knob is also used to tighten down the rack. So you turn this and it works as an anti-rattle device. And then you secure it here with the included key. So that way you can secure both your bikes and the bike rack with just one knob and key. And that's going to be about it for a look at the Inno Tire Hold HD. If I had a heavier bike that's up to 80 pounds, this is something that I would highly consider because of how easy it is to load and unload that bike, especially if you purchase the ramp separately. Now, it does have a total weight capacity though of 150 pounds, so be mindful of that if you have two heavy electric bikes. I am pretty bummed that we didn't have good clearance when it was tilted away. But in all honesty, how often will you be tilting your bike rack away, and how much clearance do you really need? You do have to be mindful that whenever you do tilt this down with a heavy bike, that's also going to be weights that you have to lift right back up. So if that's something that you feel comfortable with and you want that full access, an alternative worth considering is the Hollywood Rack's Destination E. That one also has a bike ramp included and not sold separately. It has a 70-pound weight capacity, which is a little bit less than this, but it does have a tilt-away clearance. However, that one does have a lot of straps and knobs to tighten down, while the Inno Tire Hold HD is much easier to use for the actual process of loading up the bike. So hopefully this video helped explain how this bike rack works, how it works on your Traverse, and if it is the right fit for you. This was a look at the Inno Tire Hold HD 2-bike carrier on the 2020 Chevrolet Traverse.